Hello. Thank you for joining me today as we journey through Holy Week. It's now Tuesday morning, March the 31st, AD 33. The disciples point to the withered fig tree that Jesus had cursed the day before. Jesus gave his disciples a simple lesson from it. Have faith in God. In particular, he says if they have undoubting faith, they can throw even the mountains into the sea. Now, if the disciples had ears to hear, they would recognize that Jesus is talking about more than seemingly magical powers that can curse trees and crumble mountains. He's talking about realities bigger than this. Note that he closes this mini lesson on mountain moving, undoubting faith, by saying, whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father who is also in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. Jesus is reminding them that failing to forgive looms as a bigger obstacle to answered prayer than a mountain. The disciples will soon face great challenges to their faith and their ability to forgive. Will they remember this withered fig tree on the road from Bethany? As they approached the holy city, the events from the day before could not have been far from their minds. As Jesus enters the Temple Mount, crowds gather round to hear him. They gather to hear him teach. And the chief priests and scribes and elders waste no time in making their move. They will try to lay 4 traps to ensnare their adversary. Trap 1. Whose authority? By whose authority, they demand to know, had Jesus carried out his actions the day before? Jesus doesn't take the bait. Instead, he turns the tables on them with a question of his own. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? If they respond from heaven, the next question is obvious. Then why don't you believe the one about whom John testifies? If they retort from man, they risk alienating the crowds that hold John in high esteem as a prophet. Jesus then offers 3 stories, 3 parables about 2 sons, murderous tenants, and guests at a wedding feast, all driving home the point that they're rejecting grace and truth in the service of hypocritical self-righteousness. Trap 2. Whose allegiance? The leaders try a new tactic. They send Pharisees, a Jewish sect known for its zeal for keeping the law, and Herodians, those loyal to Herod, to ask him a question. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? If he answers yes, he shatters people's expectations of a Messiah who will overthrow the Roman rulers. If he says no, he can be arrested for encouraging a revolt. But Jesus deftly evades the either-or dilemma. The denarius has Caesar's image on it. As long as Caesar is in power, it's appropriate to pay taxes to him. We are also to give God the things that are God's. Since we are made in God's image, we owe everything, all that we have and all that we are, to him. Pay your taxes and worship God. Trap 3. Whose wife in the resurrection? After Jesus has silenced the Pharisees and Herodians, the Sadducees, that's a Jewish sect denying the end-time resurrection of the dead, try to ridicule Jesus' belief in the resurrection by asking a trick question about marriage in heaven. Jesus tells them they don't understand the scriptures. There is no marriage in heaven or the power of God. Like the others, their smirk turns to marvel as they grow silent. Trap 4. Which commandment? Now the Pharisees sent forth an expert in the law to question Jesus. Which of God's commands is the greatest? Jesus summarizes his answer in one word: love. Love of God and love for neighbor. But Jesus discerns something different from this questioner. So he commends and implicitly invites him. You are not far from the kingdom of God, he says. Now it's Jesus' turn to initiate some questions with those who are trying to trap him. When he asks them a question about Psalm 110 verse 1 and how the Messiah can be David's Lord, no one was able to answer him with a word. Not from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. Jesus then launches a lengthy, scathing critique of the scribes and Pharisees, pronouncing 7 woes of judgment upon these hypocrites and blind guides. This full-scale verbal assault removes all doubt concerning Jesus' intentions, agenda, and aims. He has no desire to ally himself with the current leadership. He has come to overthrow their authority. There's no way both sides can survive this escalating conflict. Either Jesus will assume power, or he must die. With another tension-filled day behind them, Jesus and the disciples begin to head back to Bethany. They stop on the Mount of Olives to rest, giving them a wonderful view of Jerusalem as the sun begins to set behind it in the west. The disciples marvel at the size and the grandeur of those impressive buildings. But Jesus tells them a day is soon coming when not a single stone will be left upon another. He goes on to explain that his followers will experience increasing persecution and tribulation leading up to the final day of judgment. But their task is to remain vigilant and persist in faith. Tuesday is now done, but Friday is coming. This is not the flannel board Jesus some of us learned as children. This is the real historical Jesus, fully in control as he responds with grace and truth to traps on all sides. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what is coming. Every word and every step is for the fame of his Father's name and the salvation of those willing to pick up their cross and die with him.
By his own betrayed. Now my debt is paid, it is paid in full by the precious blood and my Jesus bled. Now the curse of sin has no hold on me, whom the Son set